The 11th verse, Ma kuru dhana jana yavvana garvam harati nimeshat kala sarvam maya mayamidam akhilam buddhva brahma padam tvam pravisha viditva. Having understood all of this, which is wealth, retinue, youth, everything in fact as totally illusory, maya mayamidam akhilam buddhva. Having understood, you will enter the state of Brahman, Brahma Padam Tvam Pravisha Viditva. Now I remember giving a question last week. The question I've just presented in the chat box. How do we know that we are giving the right value to things and beings that we are relating to? The question cropped up when we trying to understand the concept of absolute reality, relative reality, and no reality. The Mahatmas, they look upon the world as a mere illusion, which means they have no value to the world. The world has no reality in it as far as they're concerned. But our perception, and ignoramus's perception rather, is the other extremity of it, where you give the world an absolute reality. We mentioned giving the world an absolute reality is like giving a black market value to the world, giving it a greater value than the world deserves. And then we said the only way we need to move away from the absolute reality towards no reality is to cultivate the quality of relative reality. So all of us are somewhere in between these two extremities of absolute reality and no reality, which is to cultivate, to develop an attitude of relative reality. Now, in order to cultivate the attitude of relative reality, we need to know what value do we currently give to the world. Therefore, the question arose, how do we know what value you're giving, or whether you're giving the right value to the world, that you're dealing with things and beings? Okay, so I would be happy to listen to some of you all, if you have given a thought, especially if you remember the question, and if you did give it a thought, then you're happy to share them, please. Anyone? Is that the right question? Yes, sir. Siddharaman garu, cheppandi.
What I understand is, see, say I buy a luxury car and giving black market value to it is thinking that that is everything, that is life. If there is a small scratch in the car, I get a heart attack because I paid a crore for it. But I consider it is a four-wheeler to transport me. Then I am giving relative value. Ultimately, I should consider it as it is only a toy. In childhood, I had a toy car. Now I have a bigger car. If I take it like that, it is no value.
Just the right value.
Sorry, Ma, you're saying something?
No, not no value, just the right value for what it deserves.
Right value is relative value.
Relative value.
But no value, ultimately we should aim at no value. It's all illusory. So, am I correct?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You make absolute sense when you say that. Yeah. Anybody else?
Proper peace. The dwelling on the place.
We develop more when we find that our mind is more calm, peaceful. We don't get anxious about anything. Then we know we are in the giving things the relative reality deserves, not more, not less.
Now, when you know that things are not well as well, so your mind is calm.
Yeah.
When you know things are all well. But let's say when you come to know that things are not going that well, whether it could be the well-being of the family, whether it could be how the business scenario is influencing your industry, how people view your opinion in the community, what is your image in the social circle. When all of this is going well, your mind can be relatively calm. But when these are not in your control, then what would be the state of your mind?
That then also if we develop a detached attitude and behave accordingly, just not giving it too much importance, and we will be calm. When you are experiencing calm, even in such situations, you know you are doing the right, giving it the
relative reality or the right value, isn't it? Okay. Now, just an extreme example, since we are on this line of thought. Now, when a child is born, what is the only thing that is guaranteed? The only thing guaranteed when a child is born isn't it death? That is the inevitable. There is no guarantee that there will be a certain longevity to a child. Can you guarantee that? Can any doctor, any school of thought, any science, any medicine, can it guarantee a lifespan to you? No. So the moment a child is born, what should be the right value you give to the child? Vasantama? We can't say that the child is illusion. No, that is not right. But when the child is born, what should be the right value, means the right understanding one should have? No, I'm not saying that you want it to happen.
One day
That one day we will
One day?
be prepared for it.
One day. Now, no, nothing is permanent. We may lose the
Yeah,
child.
we may lose the child.
But yet, when that tragedy or that fact of life comes to face with it, how well does one handle it? It can happen the moment after birth. You may never ever experience it in your entire life. You see what I'm saying? So, just to go to the very bottom of it and understand what is that factual thing that is bound to happen without my expectation towards it. Obviously, I would want the child to grow well, to do well, to prosper well, to happen all the best for the child to happen. But yet, the fact is, nothing is guaranteed to the child. Nothing is guaranteed. So when you don't analyze and look at life that way, you start developing and giving it a greater value than what the child deserves. And that develops as a black market value that is nothing but an attachment. I may sound very unpalatable. I may sound very pessimistic, but it is not pessimistic. I know, to be frank, I'm reminded of my cousin sister. She had 2 kids, and when she had a third kid who was stillborn, the third kid died, and she almost consumed. The family used to deal with pesticides business. She consumed a bottle of pesticide, knowing that she had a stillborn child, a third child. First 2 kids were healthy kids. The third kid was a stillborn child. She had a bottle of pesticide, and when the tragedy happened, she had to be rushed to the hospital to save her. Now, I can certainly understand what is an attachment for a mother to a child, but attachment, another name for attachment, another expression of attachment is nothing but too much value, a black market value. You have given it an inflated value than what it deserves. And when you develop that, you will pay the price. So how do we know? It is rather difficult to give it a percentage. Whether you are giving it 70% value, 80% value, or 30% value. It is subjective. But however, it is important you know how the principle works. Now, what is the principle? Now, the only way you'll know is by observing your thoughts. The only way you know whether you are attached to anything or not, whether you have got a black market value or what value you're giving it, or whether you have it no value, it is determined precisely by observing your thoughts, observing your mind. Now, if I were to tell you, think of the Taj Mahal now. The moment I tell you, think of Taj Mahal, automatically your mind has entertained the thought of Taj Mahal. Why? Because you have directed the mind to entertain that thought, isn't it? You have directed the mind, you have given it a point to think of, the mind entertains the thought. But you must examine, observe the mind without giving it a direction. Without directing the mind to think of it, leave the mind to itself. So when you just very, very alert, be very, very sharp to pick it up. The mind will go in a direction when it is given a directive to think of. Just like I gave an example of Taj Mahal, your mind thought of Taj Mahal. I say think of the Eiffel Tower, your mind will think of the Eiffel Tower, etc. But without giving a directive to the mind, just observe the mind. When your mind is left to itself, where does your mind go? What is it that consumes your thoughts? What is it that overwhelms your mind? Wherever your mind goes on its own accord without being directed to is the test to determine that is what you are attached to, that is what you have a value for. Like I know of a student, every other day in the midnight he gets up just to keep checking how his stock market is behaving, how his stocks are, how his investments are. And his wife used to often complain to me, Guruji, he keeps getting up at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock just to check whether his stock market is, his investments are all safe. There's no reason to worry, but he just gets up and he disturbs himself and he disturbs me also. Out of the blue, where you get up from your sleep to check whether your stock market is behaving. What does it say? It only tells how exaggerated value he has, how attached to his wealth he was. So when your mind by itself goes towards anything without it being directed to, that is what determines what value you have for. Your thoughts consume you, they inundate your personality. In effect, what do you call that? That concept of thoughts inundating your personality, thoughts consuming you, is nothing but you are worshipping it. When you worship something, it overwhelms your personality, it consumes you, you become in fact a slave to that object of worship. Now, people don't have the time, nor thought, nor inclination, nor the capacity to examine it. So many people are diseased with this mindset of having a black market value or a great value for things around, not realizing that they are slave to it. Nobody realizes it. Hardly anybody does this exercise. So it is the inflated value, the black market value you have for things. And when you have that a thing, life becomes as an end in itself. When things are of a black market value, things become as an end in itself. Otherwise, it becomes a means to an end. Everything has a role in one's life, but it's not the end all and be all of life. So how does one look at things as an end in itself? When you look at things as an end in itself, it is attachment. You are worshipping it. You have become a slave to it. That is known as a black market value. Yes, sir. We can't hear you, sir. We can't hear you. I think we lost him. We'll wait for them to come back. In fact, we have Rajamani Garu is, I think, is joining us from Coimbatore. I could be wrong. I was introduced to him. In fact, he was introduced to this session by Shivakamima Soumyama, and good you could join us, sir. So he's asking a couple of things here. How to free ourselves from the clutches of Maya? The method is not at all easy. I think the total surrender of Brahman alone will free us from Maya. Yeah, all of this is, as we say, is Maya illusion, where we get caught up, we get carried away, where we get completely overwhelmed by things happening around us, in and around us. The only way is surrender to the higher knowledge. In fact, the very next verse is going to say this. In fact, verse 13, he says, is there not the ordainer? No, is there not the totality? Is there not the Lord? Is there not Brahman? So one who doesn't surrender to the higher knowledge and gets completely involved in the happenings of the world, for them, they get caught up in this illusory Maya. They get caught up in it. Okay. Jayaramam is saying, where thoughts go, mind goes. Where mind goes, energy flows. Where energy flows, things grow. She's speaking some poetry there. Yeah. You're right, ma? You're right when you say that. Harishji, could you explain yourself? You spoke about the doctor's monitor. What are you implicating? What does it convey? Not able to hear anything from Harishji. Yeah, Sidram Garu, yeah, you can say what you were trying to say.
See, a friend of mine in abroad was doing very big business, but all the time he used to use the word life and death, and every transaction in business, every occasion he used to take it life very seriously, and used to be always in agitation, and he was, you know. He was after the so-called success. But from college days also he was like that. He ultimately died recently. He had a lot of medical complication. He left a big fortune, but he's no more.
In what context are you trying to say that, sir?
No, this
Gave too much value.
he gave black market value for everything.
Yeah.
High black
Okay.
market value. And we used to always, we were in ignorance, we always used to admire and appreciate him, thinking that he was very passionate and he was a big success.
Okay. Yeah, Harishji, you're right when you say that. I get what you're saying. Okay. All good, Rajima? Okay. So let's, yeah, Amar.
Guruji, one
Yes.
doubt, Guruji. See, because this is natural for the people. Then how, like you give an example, car one and this thing. But what should be our attitude normally? So things will happen as it is. We should live to the totality and move ahead. Especially in this case, black market value. I understood from you. How should be what should be our attitude? Whether it could be a job, it could be what you give in a car or anything. It happens to the personal, you showed your personal example of your sister. So it happens with everybody. So when we should not take into the personal and leave it to the totality. What should be our attitude this time?
Yeah. No, glad you clarified it. See, ultimately, if you understand that famous analogy, we are just a spoke in the wheel of life, isn't it? So, to understand and accept whatever life gives us, whatever life presents to us, if you are able to take it as life is presented, you'll have no problem. That is on one side, what life gives us. Secondly, how we project our expectations onto the world. There are two things. One is what the world presents us, vis-a-vis how we relate to the world. So the value you give to the world depends on the value systems you have. Depends on what has influenced your upbringing. So when we allow ourselves to be in the rightful company of these great scriptures, what would happen is we will be influenced to gain their perception. We will be influenced to look at life from how they look at it. So because of a wiser counsel, because of a superior intellect, because of a grander vision, we will perhaps tend to carry our life with that perspective. See, if a person is amongst fools, I would behave like a fool. If I keep the right company, if I move amongst the wise people, the chances are I will think like a wise man. So what value you have depends on what company you have kept. The satsang, we remember earlier we mentioned satsang. So by keeping the right company, the company here we talk of the Shastras, we will be able to look at our lives from their perspective. We will try to inject their vision, their perception to our lives. And hopefully we start looking things not with so much hype. Everything is so much hype, like example which Seturaman Garu gave. It's life or death. Every business contract is life or death. Means his life depends on that. It shouldn't be looked at life like that. I remember you were mentioning, I think a few months, 5-6 months ago, that you had this job assessment or interview. There's a merger of a company, and it meant a lot to your future of the work there and things. So would life come to an end if just take the extremity that even though you said that you have fared well and you have moved on and you have got you have retained the job and the contract and you have done very well, but for discussion's sake, let's say if you had lost the job and if you had to come back to India, you would say, would life come to an end? What about 130 billion people? Are we not living in India? People only in Muscat only live, is it? It's not like that, isn't it? So when you take that the worst can happen, nothing is going to happen, nothing is going to come to an end. So when you look at things that life can carry on with or without it, even without it, if you are able to look at life, then you understand, you don't get carried away with it. Perhaps this perception can be injected into everything in life, and this comes through exposure to this higher knowledge. Start looking at things this way. Okay? Right. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay. There's a question, who is a successful man in life? By your own definition of a successful man, how many do you think can become qualified for that? Now, success is not measured by an outward success. Success is measured by an inward success. How well have you commanded your own inner peace and contentment? Irrespective of how far you have progressed in life, if you have not found that peace and contentment, you are no master. You in fact are a slave to the world. You're a slave to your own personality, to your own desires. So I would measure, or the Shastras measure, real success is one who has found himself at peace, at contentment by himself, within himself, irrespective of where he is. And if he has found that contentment, that would take him to far greater heights, even externally. So only if you have found the internal success, it will start reflecting in the outer success one can boast of or one can announce to the world. Okay? And Sudhakar Garu rightly says, satsang evolves your intellectual or your spiritual quotient, and then the rest follows. That is what I was mentioning, Amar. Okay? So let's move on. We will take the 12th verse. Vinayaminyau sayam pratah shishiravasanto punarayatah kalah kridati gacchatyayuhu tadapi namuncha त्याशापायुः दिनयामिन्यौ सायं प्रातः शिशिरवसन्तौ पुनरायातः कालः क्रीडति गच्छत्यायुः तदपि न मुञ्चत्याशावायुः Vinaya minyau, day and night, sayam pratah, dusk and dawn, shishirava santau, winter and spring, puna ayatah, they come again. Time sports, kala kridati, life ebbs away, gachatyayuhu, adapina munchat ashavayuhu. Yet the gusts of desires leaves not. So the title for this verse is the stubborn nature or the stubborn gusts of desires. So the desires are so stubborn, they are holding on to you irrespective of whatever phase of your life. Whether it is day or night, dusk and dawn, winter or spring, they come repeatedly. Time seems to be passing by, yet the gust of desires leaves not. So the urgency, the message from this verse is, the urgency is that we should somehow get rid of our desires. It is not easy. When I say that, it is not easy at all. How you end up holding on to your desires. The message is you should get rid of your desires. And the sad reality is we are full of desires. And the happiness quotient of ours is determined by the fulfillment of desires. So when your desires are fulfilled, you find you are happy. When your desires are unfulfilled, you are unhappy. That is what life is. So in fact, if you look at the precarious situation we are in, Gayatri Ma, as I've just said, life is nothing but you contacting the desires. The desires are met, you're happy. The desires are not met, you're unhappy, isn't it? Now, if you look at life, there is this such a precarious situation we are in. Now, what is the precarious situation is? Examine the nature of the world. If I ask you all, what is the nature of the world that you're experiencing? Everything in the world. What is its nature? I would say the nature of the world is, it is constantly subjected to change. It is constantly changing. It is not static, isn't it? Alright? Now, come to the nature of the mind. What is the nature of the mind? Is your mind static? The nature of the mind also is constantly subjected to change. So the world is changing, the mind isn't changing. So both these factors, the world and the mind, are constantly in a flux of change, and these two changing factors must meet to find a compatibility, must find a fulfillment to generate peace or happiness. Now I ask you, what is the probability of these two changing factors which are changing on their own radius, on their own axis, which has no reference to the other, and what are the possibility that these two merge or have a compatibility to give you happiness? What is the probability, Rajima?
Very, very low.
Very, very
Low. There's no compatibility. Minimal compatibility.
minimum compatibility. Now, can you think of an example to explain the possibility of the world satisfying this compatibility? Can you take an example? Okay, I'll help you, Ma. Huh? Now, let's say I've come to the house, or let's say, forget that, I've gone to a particular restaurant, not even restaurant. Okay, Vijaya has made a particular dish for me in a suite in the house. Okay, and the way she has made the dish, that sweet, it appealed to my palate. I thoroughly enjoyed it. 2 months later, I tell her, can you make that dish which you made that day? Now, Rajima, please answer this question. What is the probability that she will satisfy that desire of the dish she made that day, 2 months later?
I'm sure it'll be even better.
ஆமா சொல்லுவேங்க. Now what is no it's not that she has not made the sweet better. Perhaps she has used different ingredients, better quality ingredients. She brought it out in a much better way. But what is possible is my expectation of what that sweet was is not the same what it was 2 months ago. Even though that the world is much
For
better,
your memory.
the dish, sorry ma,
Yeah, it relies on your memory of the experience that you had.
relies on the memory and my expectation.
Yes.
Or I could have had the similar dish somewhere else and I'm expecting her to satisfy that expectation of mine. So if you start looking at life this way, the world may keep the world static, which is not true. The world has not changed. It's the same world, but your expectation is not the same. Even if the world is changing, keep your expectation static. The satisfaction not the same. So it is a very, somebody put a percentage, Gayatri must have 10 to 15%. So 80 to 90% failure. I don't know how you came about with that statistics. That was a quick assessment of yours. But if your life depends on trying to satisfy your desires, which means to say 80 to 90% chances are you will not be able to satisfy it. So therefore, you must understand desire. So now how can you describe a desire? So the message here is you must learn that the most difficult thing is to get rid of your desires. And the accent is, I must get rid of them. The urgency of exhausting my desires. So how would you understand a desire? How do you define a desire? How would you define a desire? A want? Now why is he saying that you must get rid of desires? Do you see anything wrong with a desire? See, if you don't see anything wrong with it, why would you want to get rid of it? Only when you see something wrong with it, you want to get rid of it, isn't it? So how would you describe a desire? I have just started off by explaining the words that the desire is the interaction between the desire and the world, the compatibility between the world and the desire brings about a sense of satisfaction or contentment or happiness. When the world doesn't meet your desire, you will find yourself disappointed, unhappy. Okay? Now I'm examining, why should we get rid of desires? You should. That reminds us not to get disappointed. Mind always goes to the past and it doesn't enjoy in the present. Vasanti says attachment leads to desires. Wanting to get or experience. See, first and foremost, you must understand. Saumyama is saying desires change according to mindset. Yeah, it is the mind that creates the different desires in each individual. See, the desire itself, desire is to be understood as an agitation or an impulse. Desire itself is an agitation or an impulse. So the more desires you have, you're not wrong to say that the more restless a person is. The less desires you have, the more peaceful you are. So at the relative level, desire is nothing but an agitation, an impulse. Desire is nothing but a sign of an imperfection within. So when you feel that sense of fullness or paripurna, the desire doesn't appear, the desire seems to disappear. So desire, when a desire props up, it's a symbol of your emptiness within. When you feel paripurna, there is no desire. When you feel a sense of fullness, there is no desire. Like once you have had a sumptuous meal, you had a full meal, would you entertain thoughts of food? Appa, I've had so much, pa. I had a wonderful meal. I don't want anything. Thank you very much. I don't even have space even for the ice cream also. No, I've overeaten actually. Thank you very much. I don't want anything more. Please, no, nothing. So that you feel revulsive for the thought of food. So the thought of food doesn't arise. But moment you feel hungry, the thought of food arises. So it is the emptiness within you that brings about the thought or desire. So desire arises from a feeling or a sense of an emptiness felt within. So it is the spiritual void that brings about desires. So you must understand that desire comes from an emptiness or a spiritual void. Therefore, from an absolute standpoint, the masters say desire has to be looked upon as a barrier between man and God. Desire is a barrier, is a limitation between you and your godhood. Therefore, all religions have personified desire as the enemy. All religions say that. So, the message is, you must get rid of your desires. Your whole life has gone by, but yet the desires leaves not. time sports. Everything seems to be going by, yet only thing that has happened is the nature of desires have changed, but the desires are still lurking. Soumyam is asking, is there any connection between desire and mind oscillation? Rajima, you have any answer to it? The question is there any connection between desire and mind's oscillation?
Direct connection. If the mind is at peace, the desires don't arise. There's a direct connection with the oscillation and the desire. That's
Where does the where do the yes ma, but where do the desires, where are the desires housed?
in the mind and intellect, your thoughts.
So mind actually is the warehouse of desires.
Yes.
Okay. Now the question is, has the mental oscillation got anything to do with the desire? To which you rightly said, there is a direct connection. They both go together. Which means, so when the mind is infested with desires, and wherever there is a desire, there is this possibility of either fulfillment or unfulfillment. So, unfulfillment, not satisfying it. So, when the desires are not met, it brings about a tremendous level of anxiety, agitation, and the mental disturbance.
Desire crops up, and yet another desire crops up.
Yes. So even if the desires are met, there are further desires that seems to keep arising. So when the desires are left to itself, and when they start breeding, and when they start manifesting in the form of greed, anger, jealousy, envy, fear, etc., all of these emotions which are directly related to the desires, so the desires and the emotions that circle the desire are going to only unsettle your mind. So if you want the mind to be at calm, at ease, at rest, you should learn to discipline your desires and discipline your emotions. You must have emotion, no doubt, but you must be able to control them. When your emotions and desires are not controlled by the intellect and the wisdom, it is only going to leave a mind which is full of restlessness, which is what you are saying, oscillation. A mind is terribly disturbed. And what gives the stability to the mind is an ability to control the mind and its emotions, or the desires and its emotions. So when the desires are controlled and the emotions are controlled, that is when your mind is stable. Yes, sir. Siddharan garu, cheppandi.
It's difficult in one go to get rid of desires, but what you feel, Guruji, if we aim at aspire for higher for the good of organization, for the good of community, for the good, then over a period we evolve and then we go desireless.
Yes. Now, it is not possible to get rid of this desire as one go. Impossible. In fact, it is not possible to get rid of any desire. So don't ever attempt to give up anything, because it is not possible to give up anything. Sir, how did you pick up a desire?
How did you pick up a desire?
All I can say is you put in a lot of effort in picking up a desire. It doesn't come that easy. So when you have put in a lot of effort to cultivate or pick up a desire, you will have to put in equivalent effort to get rid of it. It doesn't go overnight. You can't take a resolution and think of getting rid of desires. So desires don't die away naturally. So as you advised or as you're suggesting, what you should do is you must try to change the nature of the desire, change the quality of the desire. So try to change the quality of desire from tamasic to rajasic, from rajasic to sattvic. So if you are able to change the characteristics of the desire, then perhaps you will start purifying it. So you must go about purifying the desire from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic. Rajima says, from a sinner to a saint. That is our goal, ma. That is the goal we all want to reach, is one day we all want to become a saint. Jayama says, one way is to standardize. Yes, that's one way of approaching desires, is to live a life of standardization. Means you put a limit to it, otherwise there is no end to the greed. Sudhakar Garu is asking, is desire related to our vasanas? In fact, vasanas is the root of your desire. The desire manifests from your vasanas. So, desires and vasanas in fact are one and the same. Vasana, how do you describe a vasana? How do you describe a vasana with reference to the desire? Amar? My question is, how do you describe a vasana using the word desire? Answer tells her, Amar. In Amar, yes or no?
No idea about.
Okay, no problem. How do you describe? Yes, sir. Siddharaman garu, cheppandi.
Desires of earlier janmas that becomes our vasanas.
Ayyo. சார் ஏன் சார் நீங்க பூர்வ ஜென்ம போனீங்க? இப்போவே நிறைய வாசனாஸ் இருக்கு இல்லையா? போய் நிறைய நிறைய desires இருக்கு. The question is, how do you explain vasana with reference to the word desire?
Hey, vasanas are mere
And
thought
rightfully
vasanas.
so. Sorry. Now, how do you understand a vasana?
Vasanas are they are expressed as desires. They automatically come out.
Amma. So, using the word desire, how do you explain vasana? The answer, as they all have said, in fact, most of them have correctly said, starting with Jayama, she said it is unmanifest.
Craving for
No. See, to understand the word vasana, vasana is understood as an unmanifest desire. You would only know that you have a vasana for it only when it starts manifesting as a desire. And desire is liking for something in particular. Oh, I like to watch hockey. I remember in Malaysia, there was this Sultan Azlan Shah Cup. It happens once in 2 years, I think so, or once in 3 years, I'm not sure. And hockey is quite famous in Malaysia. And in Kuala Lumpur, there was this hockey tournament happening. And I went to watch the hockey match. That was the first and the last time I went to a hockey match. Now, what does it establish? There is no vasana for hockey, neither to play nor to watch. Even if it's coming on the television, you are not that excited, not does it generate any interest in you to watch. That means you don't have a vasana in it. But if you have a vasana somewhere hidden in you, how would you know that you have a vasana? When it starts manifesting as a thought or a liking for something in particular in the form of desires. Otherwise, you will not know whether you have a vasana for it or not, because vasanas are always in the seed form, in the unmanifest form. Like only when the seed sprouts into a sapling, you know that there's a seed. When the seed is embedded or under the soil, you would know what seed was there, isn't it? You wouldn't know. Only when it starts sprouting, there was a seed. Then you ask, did you plant that seed there? Then we will say, maybe some Purva Janma, somebody planted it there, now it is sprouting. As Setraman Gauru said, This Janma I didn't plant. Purva Janma somebody must have planted. So the result is today it is sprouting into a sapling or a plant or a tree. Okay. So Sudhakar Garu, is desire related to vasana? In every way it is related. It is nothing but an expression of your vasana. And there's another question, how to bridge the gap between theory and practice? Sir, glad you asked that question. In Vedanta, there is no theory and practice. In Vedantic language, if you don't practice it, you do not know it. If you don't live it, you don't know it. It is not that today I will learn it and one day I will practice it. There is nothing like that. So the entire accent in Vedanta is to not be informed of it, but rather be transformed by it. Even though there is this process of information and transformation, but the entire accent is to process the information. The real gap between theory and practice arises when information is left unattended, unaddressed. Means when knowledge you learn, when you don't process that knowledge, when you leave knowledge as somebody else's, it will remain as somebody else's. But you want to make it your own, you will have to put in a lot of effort. What we are told is there is a 70 to 80% of time must be spent in processing the knowledge, reflecting on it, assimilating it, digesting it, making it your own. And if one doesn't do this process of reflecting, digesting, assimilating and making the knowledge their own, if you don't do this, there will be an evident disparity between theory and practice. But if that is done, there is no question of theory. Knowing it is becoming it, and when you become it, you live it, it is a part of you. Therefore, we are advised to limit the amount of knowledge you learn. We are encouraged to spend more time in the process of reflecting on what you have learned, understanding what you have learned, relating to your life, to process it. It's like the food, if you keep consuming. Imagine the food you eat, if it is not digested by your system, it doesn't give you energy, isn't it? It's only the digested food that gives you energy. Do you all know an elephant spends 12 to 15 hours a day eating? Every day it spends 12 to 15 hours eating food, fresh food it needs to eat, grass or whatever the weeds, whatever it eats, whether fruits or veggie or the grass it eats. It needs to eat 12 to 15 hours. You know why it has to eat? Because it doesn't digest more than half the food it eats, so it doesn't get the energy. So it needs to eat more so that it does get enough energy to carry on with its activities. Similarly, we are living a life of an elephant. We need hundreds of ideas to give you guidance, to give you a sense of direction in life. But if you have one or two ideas, if you have one or two values, and if you give your entirety to it, give Shraddha, give dedication, complete surrender to it, you will actually get moksha through it. The problem is we are not able to give enough reflection to it. So as a result of which we don't reap the fruits of living this knowledge. But yet we are well acquainted because of a sheer cramming of information. Okay. Yes, Amar.
In this context, actually, for example, when you told today the fresh knowledge, it looks very good, so many things, and we understood. But like in this context, for example, reflection means tomorrow morning I need to understand what is the main input that I need to practice for 2-3 days and live by that. It's like reflection and digestion, assimilation, in the sense like how, 20% reading, 80% thinking on this. What are my thoughts on that, like daily practice?
See, yeah, what you need to do is give enough thought to what input has happened, whatever knowledge has come your way, whatever fresh information has come your way. You need to start relating it to your life, start questioning it, start analyzing it. When we said, for example, we said the concept of mental oscillation is directly related to desires. Now, how is it related to desires? How is mental stability related with desire and emotions. So start relating it with case studies, your own experiences. When a certain emotions come in your mind, how does it affect, how does it influence your mental stability? When desires are interrupted, how does it affect your stability? We talked about desire and contacting the world. Both are in a changing flux. So when you start examining this, when you start looking at life from that perspective, you got to put on those shades so that you start looking at life from that angle. And then you start understanding the concept, the principle, you're able to relate to it. And then start looking at your own life from that angle. Then if you keep pondering over these ideas, rather than leaving it right after the class and don't think about it, it becomes information. But if you leave some room for it for discussion or contemplation, reflection, that is when you are processing the knowledge. It's more of a personalization. You are relating it to your own personal life. Okay. Is there any degree level even for desire? I don't understand what you're asking, ma. What do you mean degree? What we only understand is this entire life's exercise is to deal with desires. All your life, you're only dealing with your desires. Whether you like it or not, you're only dealing with one desire or the other. So if you learn how to handle these desires, you have got the bull by the horns. Otherwise, you will be asking for some trouble. Okay. Now, I've not heard from Soumyama, so okay, we will leave it at this. We'll come back and continue. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Hari Om.